Thomas, am I doing this by myself? Because I feel kind of lonely up here. All right, we got a couple new people here, so we're going to go through the slides. Happy to see new faces, always. I'm Eric Van Johnson. This is Tom. We are the organizers here. If you're new, just to kind of give you some lay of the land, pizza back there, beers in the cooler, there's also sodas. Water is here in the kitchen. Bathrooms are down the hall to your right, and in case of emergency, make sure I'm out of the building, okay? That's everybody's job.
We already have all your information, so we'll charge you for what you use after the fact.
SDPHP is our sister group. That's the PHP user group here in San Diego. Next talk and last talk for 2016 will be November 9th. We don't have a presenter yet, so if anybody wants to present, feel free to step up and let me know. You're down now.
And then following that, we have the next Laravel user group, November 16th. That will also be the last for the year.
Now that's actually, instead of the fourth Wednesday of the month, that's actually the third Wednesday. We're going to move it up, obviously, to avoid the holidays.
Yeah, we still don't have a presenter for that. We have a Trello board if you want to take a look at it, get an idea, something you want to present. You don't have to be an expert. You just have to be interested.
Yep. The Trello board can be found at trello.sdlug.com.
Looks like Spencer wanted to volunteer there.
And yeah, we have a lot of ideas. If you want to do a presentation but don't know what topic to talk about, I'd suggest going there and seeing what's out there. If you have something you'd like to see talked about, let us know. We'll add you to the Trello board and you can add the card.
These are our main forms of communication. The meetup page, which is updated with all of our meetups every month. The Slack channel, which ties into IRC channel. You have to request an invite to Slack, but just hit the page, it'll ask you for an email, and then we'll plug you right in. And, of course, Twitter and our website, SDLUG.com.
Where's Arnold? Arnold's not here.
These slides are available on intro.sdlug.com, too, so if you want to visit them later for all the links.
So we do have some Laravel news since we last met. Laravel 5.3.19 is out. Is it 20? Yeah, I checked before I put this up.
Yeah, I know.
You're messing with me.
Nope.
All right, a new version of Laravel 5.3 is out. It's somewhere over 19 now. LaraCon US 2017. There was a pretty big push to get this in San Diego. I hadn't told anybody, but Taylor had reached out to me about a little over a month ago, asking me for places to host it at. I sent him a bunch of places. I do know for a fact it won't be in San Diego.
So if you're looking for someone to blame.
Yeah, Taylor reached out to me and said, sorry, but it's not going to happen this year. Yeah, that's always a plus. You want to talk about next one?
Hacktoberfest. Hacktoberfest is an open source hacking marathon running for the next 2 weeks still?
No, until Monday.
Till Monday.
Yeah.
If you issue 3 pull requests,
4 pull requests.
4 pull requests
To an open source project.
to an open source project, then you can get a free T-shirt from
DigitalOcean. In conjunction with
Glad I did that one.
Yeah. And if you happen to listen to our podcast, we had a suggestion. I happen to know for a fact one of our members took advantage of. We've actually had a couple pull requests of people who opened up PRs to our podcast repo, which has an open source license. Laracon EU videos have been released.
And Brazil. You're not going to mention that one?
Not going to mention Brazil because you really have to get drunk to understand what they're saying. Because
Or speak Portuguese.
Well, there's that. Because Laravel Brazil and Laracon EU have released videos. Really worth the watch. There's a whole YouTube channel full of them. I should have put the link up here. Whatever. just Google it.
YouTube it. Vue.js has hit 2.0. This is a major revision that breaks a lot of things. So if you're going to move to Vue.js 2.0, be aware that it will break whatever you have now.
Yes. Laravel Forge gets a developer blog. So Taylor had been adding a bunch of features to Laravel Forge. I know we have a couple Laravel Forge users here. And he decided to open up a developer's blog to explain some new features. So that's out there.
And Laravel 4.2.20 now supports PHP 7, passing all tests. So if you've been waiting off upgrading to PHP 7 but staying on 4.2, now you can.
Yep, that just happened this week, actually.
Well, John's not here, we'd have to ask him.
If you're looking for some Laravel resources out there, and again, as Thomas mentioned, all this is on intro.sdlug.com, so you don't have to copy this down, but there's some podcasts out there, some blogs, a bunch of Twitter handles.
There's one really good podcast.
But there's one really good podcast we'll get to in a second. 50 Tricks in 50 Minutes. We've been working our way through these all year. So we're on number...
50 Tricks in 25 months.
number 16.
Not a top seller.
I'm going to let Thomas explain this one to you, because he explained it to me. I think I understand it, but...
I'm going to let Frank explain it. So this is a simple method that will allow you to call a relationship and populate it when it's returned to you. So normally the user relationship that you see called there on the 8th line is not eager loaded, and this will do an eager loading for you so that when the model gets saved, those records are instantly available without additional query. You can also use the load function or the with function or the with attribute. Yeah.
Right. These are tricks, yeah. So dynamic magic with. We touched on this in another slide a while back. I think it was with models. But essentially, what they're saying now this is in a view, a blade template, right? So this isn't a model, but within your blade template, you could actually instead of doing this right here, where you're calling your post and you're saying with post, we can take this shortcut approach where we can go with posts, which I think we had a discussion last time whether that was a good approach or a bad approach. But again, just a little trick. You can just do with posts and pass your variable. All right. Shameless self-promotion time.
Yes, we are PHP Ugly.
We are PHP Ugly.
Eric and I record every Thursday.
Yep.
While enjoying beverages and running out of things to talk about. And we're slowly gaining popularity.
Yes.
With apparently no reason.
So yeah, we'll typically once a week we record. We haven't missed a week yet. We've gone over 6 months.
We're on episode 33, released 2 days ago. 3 days.
So we'll typically release on Mondays. So it's a good way to start your work week to download our podcast and.
Well, no. Only if you want to understand the dozen.
I wouldn't listen to more than like 3 at a time.
Yeah,
really.
No, there's one running gag, and
actually there's 2. There's Evan as well. Evan's a running gag.
Oh yeah, and use a password manager. Although I don't know if that stays in.
Yes. So yes, please listen to us. We're out there. It's fun. We talk a lot about the user groups. This one and the SDPHP one. Talk a lot about the stuff we work on, and then we'll talk about PHP stuff.
Talk a lot about what you wore to the user group and personal style decisions.
We'd like to thank our sponsors, CARI.net, which is the location you're at right now. They're providing the food, the place, the stream, all that stuff. So thank you, CARI.net. Diego Dev bought the beer. We do the website, all that. A lot of us work with Diego Dev. So employee, yeah. Pay half the guys to be here. All right. So that's the end. Okay, so we have 2 presentations. Who wants to go first? Who wants to go first? Where are you at? So we're very happy. For those of you that don't know, Kalen is with us. He works with us at Diego Dev. He's actually in town for a client meeting. And Kalen was a longtime member of the San Diego PHP user group. I don't think we had the Laravel user group when you were here, right? Yeah, he was a member of the San Diego PHP user group. I think you did what, 2 talks with us, and then you left the state. It was horrifying. So he's actually back in town for a client meeting, and I'm like, hey, dude, you're in town. I mean, you might as well do a talk for us. So he's going to do one, you're going to do one. Who wants to go first?
Yes, let's hear it for Kalen.
Kalen! Let's go. We'll take a brief intermission after Kalen's. All right, you're going to do it over there? You're going to come over here? That is not your slide. This is, just so you all see, there's only 7 slides here, so this. All right. Okay, you're streaming. This is the mic. Enjoy yourself. Thanks. Don't embarrass yourself. Okay?
All right, so we were going to talk about accessors and mutators in Laravel Eloquent. If you haven't used them yet, they might sound difficult or scary, but they're really not. The accessor basically can be used to modify any data coming out of the database, anytime you're retrieving it from the model. I moved it slightly and now it's dead. I'm already embarrassing myself.
What did you do?
A mutator modifies any of the data going into the database. So, take a look at each of those individually. But basically, the accessor and the mutator, you can modify these automatically on any model by using a sort of magic method. Basically, you name your method, get whatever the data or the name is, and then attribute, and you camel case the name. So if you have a model, say a user with a first name, it's probably first underscore name in the database. You would then make a function called, or a method called get first name attribute, all camel cased. That method accepts the data. You can modify it and return it. So whenever you call that that data, so if you get the first user and then echo out the first name, it will modify it however you set that in the accessor. So if the name Eric is all lowercase, then if you uppercase it, then it will automatically be applied. The mutators are similar. All you change is you change the get to set, so you set the data attribute, again using camel case. With mutators, you don't return the data, you set it in the attributes array on the on the model. So again, if you want to modify the first name, you can set on the attributes first name. Here you use obviously the name in the database, the column, and then you can modify however you want. If you want them all to be only uppercased on the first letter, so if the user for some reason types a capital R instead of capital E, you can have it fixed so that it's always capitalized in the first letter. So a couple of things you'd want to take care of. Obviously, Laravel has built-in methods and objects or classes for validation, so you don't want to necessarily use these for validation. It seems like it might be a good idea, but there's no reason for that. You don't necessarily want to use these for casting data. Say the database contains a 0 or a 1. You could use a accessor and return a Boolean, perhaps, but we're going to get into ways you can actually do that easier. And then you don't also want to use that for styling or styling any type of data that you might use in the view. The reason for that, one good example is if you have perhaps money in the database. You don't want to perhaps add a $sign in the model. You don't want to do that because obviously if you need to use that and it's always outputting a $sign in when you get that data, that would mess up any type of math that you'd have to do with it. So you want to stay away from that. So, as I mentioned, we have a special variable that we can use in models to cast certain methods or data to a specific value. So I didn't list them all here, they're in the Laravel documentation, but on any model you can create a cast variable, and you can set any type of value to either be Boolean, array, collections, so any type of specific data that you want retrieved, you can have it set to be exactly that. So instead of, perhaps if you have an isAdmin column in your database, instead of returning 0 or 1 and working on that, you can have it be specifically a Boolean, true or false. If you have perhaps a JSON object that is the options, you can have it come out of your model specifically as a collection. So it'd be set exactly like a special array. And then there's also a date and a date time option you could use to cast as well, but then there's also a specific dates variable we can use as well to cast any date coming out of the database as a carbon instance. So that was all. Any questions?
It's always carbon?
I think so. I think Laravel always defaults to carbon. And that works because it extends the datetime interface. So you can use it anywhere.
So is this mainly used to normalize data in the database, or what's the purpose of it?
So the mutators, you can use that to normalize data in the database. If you want something specific, like like names, obviously, if you want not just any type of uppercase, lowercase, or anything like that, capital R. One of the suggestions I think is you want to be careful with that and not restrict it too much. You know, if something's wrong, you want to use validation and make sure the data is correct rather than trying to do it within the model. And then again, the access is just when you're getting that data.
The set mutator you have there using the attribute like that there, and not using, like, what most of us might do is this arrow set create those.
You mean in the when you're creating the name of the method?
Yeah, well, like right there, you're setting the value first name equals the
Okay.
You've got this, arrow attributes, that's but of course you can also take this arrow first name. But that's what's important, is to create.
That's true. I'm not sure. You might have to set it in the attributes array because this hasn't been persisted to the database yet. This is before it, gets saved to the database. So, yeah, that actually might not be available yet because the model's generated from what's in the database, right? So, that's my guess.
I think we can also create a getter for attribute that doesn't exist. So if we say get name attribute, then it can take the first name, last name, and add it, return that name, attribute.
It's a good tip. So you can set an accessor without the actual data, the actual column, just by naming it then.
And then the same thing for like mutators too. You can have a mutator with set name, but you only have first name, last name, and then it takes
makes sense. Because it's both working before and after anything touches the database.
How do you know how you, if you have a mutator on something, how you link to that value avoiding the mutator? So if you have this first name attribute, how do you, then you need to store it as error capital R,
I don't know. In case you needed that.
If you do that, it's always
you can access the attributes array correctly.
Could you force create one? I don't know if that will overwrite or skip any of those. Can we pull up Laravel code on here?
Yeah.
Take a look. I don't know.
You want to do that for me real quick? Here. You seriously really want this Laravel code?
No. I'll search for it.
I was saying, I mean, I can do it for you real quick, but.
It's an idea. It's pretty simple.
It's a pretty simple topic. Do you want to do Laravel code or not? Talk to me, man.
No, I'm not gonna do that.
You're not gonna do a demo? Wait, where you going? You done? Come here. Any more questions for Kalen? Let's all give a round of applause for Kalen. You guys been traveling. We appreciate him coming out here and talking. All right. Thank you, sir. I'll relieve you of your duty. I
Thanks.
appreciate that. All right. Normally we'll take a quick break between talks, but it really just hasn't been that much time passed. So let's see.
That's okay.
Yeah, we got tons.
I'll talk endlessly.
You ready? All right, brother. It's all you. All right.
So all the code that I'm going to show you for this is on GitHub, right there at the bottom of the slide, and both of these slides are going to be on the SDLUG.com website. So you should be able to view everything that we're seeing here. Where's the clicker?
I used the left right arrow.
So we're going to look today at polymorphic models. And we're going to start with the really basic structure of it. So here we've got two models we want. We've got a posts and a comments model. Post is where an admin puts his stuff. Comments is where users leave their comments on it. Comments contains the cancer part. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a likes model. Any user can like a post or like a comment. And we're going to keep them all in the same table. We're not really going to care what it's tied to. We're also going to allow for images and videos and slides and presentations and stuff like that. So, hey, look at that, a clicker. So, we will use this for analytics purposes. We can see how many likes we have throughout the whole system. We can break it down by most popular post or most popular comment or whatever we want to do. But really, a like is just a like. There's no reason to have comment likes and post likes.
Just exit out then. Don't continue. Hit the red button. Hey, that guy's clicking your slide again because it's not on your slide.
So the really important part about our likes table is these two columns. The likable type and the likable ID. And this is where it gets confusing. But if you're going to have a polymorphic model, you need to have a type and an ID. The word likable doesn't really matter. It's just the thing that we use to identify the columns when we call the special method that we'll create later. So, now we have our model structure.
Can I ask a quick question? Why you got rid of timestamps? It's like, oh, never mind. Okay.
Just circling things.
Yeah.
So, in our model structure, we have this is our post. So our post has many comments and has a fillable subject and body. And this is the polymorphic thing right here. So we're going to morph many, and then we're going to give it the model that we're going to use, and we're going to give it the name of the columns, the two columns that store the information about the morph. Okay, so likable in this case ties very exactly to likable here. If I change that to like type and like ID, then I would have to change that to like instead of likable. They have to match 100% because this is how the polymorphic relationship looks up what it is supposed to be. Is everyone clear about what a polymorphic relationship is, by the way? So, a polymorphic model is something that starts out in one state and changes to another. So it starts out as a like, but it contains data either for a comment like or a post like. So depending on where it's being used, it changes what it does. So polymorphic stuff isn't the most useful in our environments, but it does have cases where it can be pretty useful. Image processing is a really classic one. If you're uploading an image to a site and it supports uploading PNGs, JPEGs, and GIFs, the way you handle those things needs to be different, but they're all just images. So polymorphic on that would be a good example. So this is the comment model. The comment model doesn't have a comments relationship. It just has the likes method. It's, in this case, exactly the same code. So for likes on post and comment, you're doing the same thing. You're telling it that when I ask for the likes relationship, it uses a morph to figure out which thing it's related to. However, on the like model, we simply say that this is likable and that it morphs. This likable is the same as the other three likables. So the fact that this method is named something that there are two columns of that have a type and an ID ties the whole thing together. Now this magic blindfolded behavior is what makes polymorphic models in Laravel so complicated. Is that this isn't just a relationship function, it's a morph function because it has the name that the columns have shared in the table. So the name there is important. Likable is important. The fact that this says this morph to seems like it's missing information. But what it does is it looks up the likable type and likable ID for the record you're currently looking at and fills in the missing information from the database. So the first thing you need to look at once you have your models defined is tying these relationships together. This is something that the documentation does not adequately cover, in my opinion. So we're going to cover it real quickly. We've got a post. I'm going to like that post. We're going to send a request along and the post ID, and we're going to look up the post based off its post ID. And then we're going to say post likes, calling the method, not the property. Save, and then new like. And then just return a JSON response that says true. Same thing for comments. Find the comment, like method, save method, new like. need to have additional information, like when the person liked something, then you can create the new like, populate the attributes with that information, and then save it as a variable inside the model. But in this instance, we just need to find the two together, that this was liked. You can access it just like any other relationship. So comment likes count, just like any normal eloquent relationship. So when we look at what gets saved, when we look at what's actually getting stored, it's kind of weird. This, the likable type, is the model that the polymorphic model ties to. So this like is for a post, and this likable ID is for post number 1. So there's 4 entries for post number 1, 4 likes, and then here there's 4 likes for comment number 1. So the magic that's being done here is that it's pulling the model name from the database, evaluating, like literally eval the model name, and doing a find on the likable ID that matches it. So what's being stored here is all the information you would need to know about what this is for and what specific record it's for. Paul? But I think that's ugly, and it's not very flexible. So what you can do is you can create a morph map relationship. You can say, when I refer to posts, I actually mean the post class. And when I refer to comments, I mean the comment class. So when you do it like this, now you can't do this retroactively. It won't just fix your records once you create this relationship. But when you create your new records, they'll store like this: posts, comments, etc., etc. And this is really helpful for when you want to work with repository patterns, when you want to work with stuff that might change in the future. You're going to have users v2. Yeah, wherever you want to, or the kernel, or in the model. It just has to be before the method gets called. You can do it pretty late. Many polymorphs. So we've got likes, and likes are, one like goes to a post, or one like goes to a comment. But we can have tags. So inappropriate would be a tag. And you can tag posts or comments with the tag inappropriate. And you don't want to tag inappropriate. You don't want a duplicate of that tag to tag every comment that's inappropriate. You want one tag titled inappropriate, and you want it applied to a bunch of comments and a bunch of posts. So we've got our tags, which is just the ID, the name of the tag, which would be inappropriate, and the timestamp. And we're going to create a pivot table. This pivot table will let us join our tags table to anything we want to. And that pivot table is going to have all of our morph information. So with the likes, we didn't have the like ID because we just had a like record. Its ID was self-contained. Now with tags, we need to say which tag ID this applies to keep the pivot. But then these two columns, instead of say, when you normally have a pivot table for a relationship belongs to many or has many, your pivot table is tag ID, post ID. But our tags are global. Our tags apply to posts, and so we need to say, yeah, tag ID and something else. So it could be a post, it could be a comment, it could be an image, it could be a video, but the tag applies to all things. In this same way, we're just going to say morph too many instead of morph many. And morph too many, we give it tag, and taggable. Again, taggable, and you'll see the taggable method on the tags model has to be the same across all 4 places. So now our tag can contain posts. So if I'm looking at my tag inappropriate and I say, I want to know how many posts are tagged as inappropriate, or I want to know how many comments are tagged as inappropriate, or I want to know how many posts and comments are tagged as inappropriate. Well, you do morphed by many and you can inverse this relationship. So you can say that this tag, when it's only applying to posts using the taggable column again, will return all the posts that are tagged in this way. So it just filters out everything that doesn't fit. So, some quick tips. I'm sorry, well, let me, before I do this, does this make sense? Sweet. So, some quick tips. Attaching versus saving. This is something that still catches me every time I'm doing relationships in Eloquent. And this comes up in polymorphic relationships a lot. It's the difference between attaching and saving. So relationships without a pivot table are saved with the save model method. If there's no pivot, then what it's doing is it's finding the column named post ID in this model and populating it with the ID for the model you're calling the save method on. Relationships with a pivot need a glue. So they need their own table to attach the 2 models together, because the models themselves don't have an ID column for the relationship. So when you're gluing these things together with a pivot table, you're using that pivot table to attach them. Your pivot table is the glue that takes 2 separate models together. So when you're doing save, I wish I had a good way of memorizing this. This was the best I could come up with, because I still, like I said, I still get this wrong. When I'm working on a new system that has comments on it, and I go right up to the point where you're saving the comment, I go, oh, is it save or is it attach? Is it bind or is it sync or is it? So this is one of those things that's really good to like tell yourself as a mantra until you remember it as best you can. But if there's a pivot table, it's attached. If there's no pivot table, it's saved. Hey, question.
You mentioned sync.
Sync is the best one. If you have a many-to-many relationship with a pivot table, then you can sync items between them. So in the case here where I'm saying so I'm saying save right here, but let's say I was saying attach. Well, when you're attaching, you can attach an array or a collection of multiple models. You can attach 10 models. So if I were going to mass tag stuff as inappropriate, then I would send it a list of IDs for inappropriate comments, and then I would bind them all at once using attach. But if I was going to create a select box, a multiple choice select, where you said tag all the selected elements as inappropriate, then you would use a sync. And sync basically says delete anything that's not in this array or collection and add anything that isn't. Or add anything that is, delete anything that isn't. So sync says take these 2 things and bind them together exactly in the way that I'm passing in. So if you have 5 posts on your site and you say, I want to sync post 3 and 4 as inappropriate, then when you look up the tags for inappropriate, only posts 3 and 4 will have that relationship. If you used to have 1, 3, and 4, then 1 will have been removed. Does that make sense? It's
And that would be more efficient than detaching and then attaching.
yeah, because it'll leave anything in the pivot table that was already there if it didn't change.
For the format, do you ever use integer as the index to try to save some space,
You wouldn't really save space. You wouldn't really save anything on indexing there. That gets into MySQL's indexing peculiarities. These are terrible, terrible columns. In both cases, well, specifically the likable type is bad because it's a lot of the same thing. And treeing and hashing algorithms are bad at having a lot of the same thing. So you would never index on this, and you would never look up on this. You would always do a lookup on the ID and then do the relationship swap. And I don't know if integers would even work. That'd be an experiment to do.
So you wouldn't index likable type, likable ID?
You could, because in this case, there's only 2 likable types. So you'd have an index of 2 for 10,000 records. So it doesn't get you underneath.
Yeah, but what if you had more than 2? What if you had multiple things?
It still wouldn't. If you watch a sorting algorithm execute, you'll see how it optimizes tables of things. If you have 10,000 of something and you have 1,000 different options, that means you have an index of 10 elements. So your efficiency is in no way improved. 10 cycles out of 10,000 cycles on a sorting algorithm is not helpful.
Even if you had likable ID as the first index,
It,
Well, the likable ID would continue to be green because the likable type could be any.
right, so you'd still end up with
So what would you index?
well, I was thinking you index one of those columns that matter.
yeah.
Like each of those.
I think you'd be doing it if you were doing MapReduce stuff in a weird way, but you wouldn't really ever be looking up on those because they're relationship columns in the first place. So there's no information in there that's relevant to you. It's the endpoints that they link to that are relevant. And because it uses an ID column, it's as fast as it already can be. Because integers in this use case are as fast as they get.
But I mean, if you're doing a query, so if you're starting with comments, you got a comment, you got that ID, it's not gonna look up the likes ID, right? The comment has no knowledge of when it's trying to look at a relationship and have a matching, it have no knowledge of likes IDs for primary key.
No, it does. If you're looking at the comment and you want the likes for this comment, then the first thing it does is look at the likes ID for itself and for the likable type to equal comment.
Right, so but you wouldn't index those two columns.
You could index likable ID, but indexing likable type wouldn't help because you're still chunking the whole system.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, a chunk of half doesn't help you. And in fact, if you excessively key stuff, a chunk of half could be improperly determined to be a helpful index, when in reality there's a better index to chunk on. So, yeah, for stuff like status, if you have the status 0, status 1, status 2, indexing on those things is usually more harmful than helpful. there is a subtle difference, and there are rules that are pertaining to the subtle difference. So the best example I can think of right now would be images, like I was saying earlier, where JPEGs have a JPEG compression versus PNGs, which do not have a compression rate. They're a raw format. So you know you have an image, and you need details about that image, but you don't want a compression column on your images table because that's a complete waste for half of the images that are uploaded. So you do a polymorphic relationship, and now you're only creating a record for compression. So you're not just creating a likes table, but you're using that pivot table to store data. And that you're storing data that's relevant specifically to the pivot. Timestamp's a great example in this case. Let's see, I use them for yeah. If you have subscriptions, a user can have a subscription to your site that is monthly through one payment processor, or yearly through another payment processor, or free because of some other thing. So you would have one user record, but then you have all of the information about the payment processor that is specific to that payment processor on the pivot. And because they're all payment types, and you need to be able to do a lookup on how many subscribers you have, or how many subscribers you have of this type, or how many subscribers you have of this type and at this rate, then pivot tables let you do that stuff. It's a relationship on something that your system can be agnostic to. Right. Yeah. You know, I regret polymorphic models like 75% of the time. I almost, yeah, I almost never get to the end of a project and say, that was the right choice. But it is a tool in the arsenal, and there are some occasions where it's nice. A good example is transparency to the user. If a user is going through Facebook and liking their friend's post, and they like a sponsored post, to the user, a like is a like is a like. They don't care that it's a sponsored post. But I can 100% guarantee you that when you like a sponsored post, it's got a sponsor post ID that is completely separate from the user's post IDs, and something that is being tracked much more stringently than how much you liked Tina's cake. different.